Hi, I'm Johnson Wagner. Welcome into this Five Clubs conversation. Today I'm joined by my co-host Brendon de Jonge, former college teammate of mine, and we are excited to have Webb Simpson joining us today. 7-time PGA Tour winner, 2012 US Open champion, 2018 Players champion.
I think this is only a grip.
It's only my sole connection to this.
It's only in my hands on every single shot.
It's an extra 2 yards of carry when it matters most.
Yeah, only a grip.
Mine are only golf ride.
Respect the grip.
And with that, welcome in Webb. Brendon, Webb, thanks so much for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. Love talking to you guys, and we got a lot to talk about, I'm sure.
Yes, we do. Let's jump right into it. Start off with a little bit of PGA Tour talk. What is your feeling, philosophy on how the PGA Tour's direction is headed right now? Most importantly, in regards to designated events and the structure going forward for next year.
I think, Rory McIlroy kind of captured this line and it's stuck in my head because at first, Johnson, I was against this idea. I'm a traditionalist. I love how the PGA Tour's kind of always been. Sure, we have our majors, our players. We have some bigger events, but it seems like there's always been equal opportunity for guys to get in these events, whereas this, at first, I thought was just for the elite, for the top, get them paid, get them guaranteed money. But Rory kind of said it this way, that these opportunities is making the PGA Tour the hardest place in the world to play, and these events specifically the hardest events to get into. And so we've created a system where the most elite golfers are competing for a select few events, and it's going to make the PGA Tour that much more competitive. And then I thought I can get on board with that to highlight not only the PGA Tour, but what the PGA Tour talent has to offer for the world to watch. And I've even found myself this year, I haven't been playing as well, but I've kind of kicked it into gear of working hard, trying to get in these events for next year. And so I think we're going to see, the best players more often getting together, competing. I still am for a cut. I love a cut on Friday, but we'll see. We'll see what time shows us.
And that's basically what I wanted to hear you say, because I think the product this year in those few events has been absolutely spectacular. Most recently at the RBC Heritage with that wonderful playoff, Matthew Fitzpatrick, Jordan Spieth. Tiger talked Tuesday in his press conference in the Masters about his event, the Genesis, wanting to have a cut. Mm-hmm. He referenced Jack Nicklaus as well. I would imagine Arnold Palmer would feel the same way about Bay Hill. Do you think that's something that is still in flux, or do you think it's kind of set in stone, there'll be no cut?
I'd like to think there is still going to be a conversation. I mean, I even told some of the top players, I kind of joked with them. I said, what are you so worried about a cut? When you're a top 20 or 30 player in the world, typically you're not thinking about the cut on Friday. You're thinking about trying to get in position to win on Saturday, Sunday. And so I certainly think at Arnold Palmer, at Genesis, maybe even at Memorial, having a little bigger field to kind of highlight Jack and Arnie and Tiger, and also a cut, I think it makes sense. But I think at this point, the conversation's somewhat been paused to really focus on our sponsors getting the money, setting us up for a full year of these $20 million purses.
It feels like, and we touched on this previously, that a cut is such an important part of professional golf. Mm-hmm. Because regardless of who you are, you watch the best players in the world come Friday afternoon, they're grinding it out to make that cut, and it creates great TV, creates great stories. I would hate to see that go away.
I would too. I mean, you guys know this as well as I do. I've been equally as nervous on a Friday trying to make a 6-footer, birdie one of the last two, than trying to have a really good finish Sunday, even in contention. Because it changes your whole week. It dictates where you're going to be the next few days getting ready for the next tournament. And we've all had stories where we make the cut on the number, we shoot a low round Saturday early, and all of a sudden Sunday, maybe not have a chance to win, but we got a chance for a top 5 or 10 finish. And And I think you're right, Brendon. Like I've always thought there should be a designated camera or channel even for the guys who are on the bubble on Friday, because every week there's guys who bogey the last two or birdie the last two who get in, which are great stories to see.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I may have to talk to the guys at PGA Tour Live about having to redirect some of those streams on Friday afternoon. And to harp on it a little bit more, the cuts, like I look at the Waste Management Phoenix Open, you've got a great record there. Do you think that kind of event wants to lose half of their field on a Friday or on a Thursday, Friday, and think about all the revenue they bring in, all the money they donate to charity? Like, these are things that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about. I think that tournament, and I'm speaking a little bit, not like I know what I'm talking about, but they pack that house on Friday, and they've got sun up to sundown golf, and I just think those are the days we're going to lose. And I remember playing in China in the HSBC no-cut event, 74, 75 Friday. I wanted to get out of there so bad, and now you're going to have these guys that are, and I hate to say stuck, they're still playing for a lot of money, but I think there's something that gets lost when you're completely out of it after Thursday, Friday, and you're stuck around playing for 2 more days.
I think so, for sure, Johnson. I mean, I think those fans on 16, 17 at Phoenix, they don't necessarily care that I love Scottie Scheffler, think the world of him, but they don't necessarily care that he's coming through. They just want more golfers. They want more people to yell at. They want more people to cheer for or boo.
Half the time they don't know who's playing, right?
They don't know who's playing.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And I think you'll see that at other events. Young golf fans, sure, they want to see stars, but they want to see golf. And the more golf we can give them, the better. And so that's definitely a problem that we're going to see. And I don't know how the tour is going to tackle that. But, to be specific for the listeners, the difference in kind of that, how do we get to the 78-man field versus 100 or 120? Well, I was explained to that 78 and 100 are fairly synonymous with tee times and TV. That wasn't a big difference. So it was either kind of the 75 to 80 versus 120. And at 120, you have to have a cut in order to provide kind of the twosome ideal for Saturday, Sunday, TV time, yada, yada. So it's a interesting time to be part of that on the PGA Tour, and I'm sitting on the board, so I'm seeing the ins and outs of it. I know you've sat on the board before. There are big decisions to be made. Big decisions indeed.
I was sitting on the board when Liv was starting up, and it was a conversation that had been happening for 5 or 6 years. Do you have any thoughts on what's going on there and the future of that tour?
I don't think the Liv Tour survives. I really don't. I think some of the golfers who have gone, I've heard, have expressed strong interest in wanting to come back. I think for some guys, they love it. They're toward the end of their career and they're making a big payday, which is, I totally understand that. But I think at the end of the day, most golfers on the PGA Tour are competing to try to win golf tournaments. It is providing their living, but I think what gets them excited, what gets them out of bed in the morning, is the idea of improving, getting better, seeing how good they can get against the best players in the world. And I think the Liv Tour, for a lot of the guys, they realize, man, there's not that much adrenaline out here. It's not what I used to feel on the PGA Tour. PGA Tour, there's these building blocks. I'm in these lower level events. I want to get to these upper level. I want to get into the majors. I want to qualify for the FedEx Cup. There's all these, I guess, platforms or levels you can get to, whereas Liv is just, your schedule for the year. And sure, there's a lot of money to compete for, but there's no real accolades that the PGA Tour offers.
Yeah, having that, I always described it as a carrot always dangling in front of you playing the PGA Tour, unless you're top 10 in the world, no matter what level you get at, there's always that next step to take, and that's what motivates you to work hard and practice.
Yeah, I agree. It's what kind of gives you that adrenaline. I think we're all adrenaline junkies, and we want to feel those nerves. And just seeing the viewership and the people attending, I don't think they're getting those same nerves that they have been used to their whole career.
I want to touch on the future of this tour. Obviously, there are a lot of good young players coming up. Give me 3 or 4 guys to really keep an eye on moving forward, guys that have impressed you that you've played with.
Well, it's hard to not say Scottie Scheffler because of what he's done, but I remember before he won, I played with him at the Century Tournament of Champions, and he hadn't won yet, but in 18 holes, I saw him hit every kind of shot. He hit driver, low cut, high draw. He hit everything. And Brendon, these young guys, Scottie was not nervous at all. He looked like he'd been on tour 15 years. And I've seen that in other guys as well. Played some with Sam Burns. who they look like they've been out here for a long career and they know what they're doing. Another guy maybe who hasn't won yet, Maverick McNeely, really impresses me. I don't think he really has a weakness. He hasn't won yet, but I think he's one of those guys. He's come close a couple times. Super professional in all that he does. Super aware of his weaknesses and trying to get better. Maverick's really impressed me, and I think he'll win at some point really soon.
I was kind of expecting you to talk about Cam Young a little bit, fellow Demon Deacon, and obviously you had your last week with your longtime caddy Paul Tesori at the Valspar Championship. I was covering for Golf Central, and I was thinking you were going to go out and dominate. Perfect golf course for you, and watching you guys off that 18th green, realizing it was your last tournament together, that almost brought tears to my eyes in the situation. You both had your families there. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with Paul and how that kind of happened with Cam.
Yeah, so Paul and I were together 12 and a half years. He was more than a caddy. He was my swing coach, great friend. We stayed together on the road a lot. And Johnson, it was one of those things where I felt like at the end of 2022, kind of in the fall, I was cutting back a little bit. I had battled an injury, and I had heard through my agent that Paul had a couple of really great offers to go work for a couple young players. They turned them down. And I'm kind of trying to assess the situation. Yes, I want Paul to caddy for me moving forward, but I also want what's best for him. And I felt like, is he saying no because of our friendship, or is he saying no because he wants to continue to caddy? So we just started a conversation. And there was only a couple of guys where he told me he would be very interested in going to work for him. Cameron was at the top of his list. And Cameron and I talked, and Valspar week, it just turned out that Wednesday, Paul got the job offer. Paul, we talked a bunch that week. He took the job. So knowing it was our last week, it was a lot of emotions. I hadn't had a good week on tour in a year and a half. And so it was fun to get in contention. I didn't have the best Sunday, but to finish off with the top 10 with Paul was super emotional. And I honestly wasn't that emotional in the final round until 18, kind of feeling this is our last round together. My family's over there. My wife's crying. His wife's crying. My kids are crying. They're not sure what's going on. They're wondering they call him Boudreaux. They're like, why'd you fire Boudreaux? I'm like, well, I didn't really fire him. But my daughter Whitney had the best line in the parking lot. She's crying. She's 8. And she says, Boudreaux, I hope Cameron plays really bad, and I hope he fires you. And then she said, and my dad will hire you back again. But no, Paul's in a great situation. They had an awesome first 2 weeks together. Second at the match play, and I think 7th at Augusta. Paul has hired a new financial advisor in the last couple of years. So when those 2 checks came in, the financial advisor didn't know what to do with it, because those are his 2 biggest checks in a long time. So I wish them the best. Cameron Young is obviously going to be, I think, a top player for a long time. Ball speed up there with Rory, hits it as good as anyone, and I think him and Paul are going to go on a great run.
What do you think Paul is going to bring to that relationship? I know you and Paul kind of were a little bit of the catalyst for Cam bringing in Chad Reynolds, who I think is a great caddy, but in my perception, Cam's a little bit more of a quiet guy. Like, what is Paul going to be able to get out of him that Chad wasn't able to?
Well, I think one of Paul's strengths is kind of verbal, just affirmation. Making you feel good about what you're doing and reminding you of that over and over. He did that for me, and I think Paul went into match play not knowing a whole lot. I played practice rounds with Cameron a little bit, but Paul told me through the first couple of days he realized Cam was struggling with confidence with his putter. Well, Paul watches him putt on the putting green his first 2 days and basically says he's starting every putt on line. He has a great stroke, great fundamentals. He just doesn't read greens that well. And so I think even in a couple of days, Paul telling him over and over, buddy, your stroke's perfect. You're starting him on line. Cameron made a ton of putts that week. I think that was the best statistic putting week he's had in a very long time. And I think that only came from Paul affirming, hey, you're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep working on reading the greens better. And I think you and I have talked about this. Reading greens is a skill. It's a tough skill to get better at. And if Cameron can do that, I think that maybe the only missing link in his game is consistently putting well. yeah, he's going to win a lot of times.
That's a lot of confidence in yourself as a caddy to step into a new situation like that and right away insert yourself. Obviously, he's very, very good at what he does. I agree. I think that they're going to have all kinds of success going forward. I mean, I've been out with you and Paul many, many times, and he's obviously very, very good at what he does on the back.
He is. I think he's at the point where he's 51 and he realizes he doesn't have a ton of time to caddy, and so he's not going to waste time by holding his thoughts back. I think most people know him and realize he doesn't have a filter. Sometimes that's jumped up and it's bit him, but for the most part, I think it serves him well because as a player, I always knew what he was thinking because I knew he would tell me and be honest with me. And sometimes it was hard. It was tough conversations to hear his feedback, but also I appreciate it because I knew that this is what he thinks. This is how I need to get better. And I can't take offense to that because he's just trying to get us to play better, more consistently.
There's a lot of guys that wouldn't be as accepting of that, though. There's a lot of guys that
yeah. Like you?
Well, a lot of other guys, too.
Well, I remember 2010, I had just gotten split up with Stephen Hale, Pepsi, and I hired Matt Hauser for a little 3-week trial, and it was New Orleans. And Matt gets me in the bunker on the practice round. We're hitting some shots, and he looks at me and he's like, "Dude, your bunker game is terrible." And I was taken aback by it, but we worked out in the bunker that entire week. Ended up needing to hole out a bunker shot on 18 to make the cut. Hit this beauty that lips out, and I remember walking off not upset about the cut missed because I missed plenty of them, but I was like, "Dude, if you're in, I love you being forward with me. You made me a better bunker player in 3 days. Like, Let's do this thing." And I have so much respect for caddies. There's so many caddies that they walk on eggshells around their players and having the mindset to be able to go out there and be like, "You know what, I want this job, but I'm going to do it my way." I've got tremendous respect for Paul in week 1.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I even told Paul back in the day, I said, "Listen, if I'm over a shot and the wind switches, I need you to pull me off." Where I think a lot of caddies would be afraid to in that moment and just hope the wind doesn't get the ball. But I think as a player, it just gave me freedom to know, like, hey, I'm never doubting what he's saying. If he thinks it's 3-wood and I want to hit driver, he's going to tell me. But if I really want to hit driver, he's got to give me kind of the confidence that if he thinks it's okay, I'm going to go forward with driver. But if he really doesn't like it, then he's going to tell me. And I never doubted once that Paul was holding back some of his opinions. And I think that's what makes him great.
I don't know how well you know Cameron. Is he going to be someone that's going to be accepting of all that?
I think he will be. I think Cameron's got a bit more fire in him than I did in terms of the way he kind of deals with his emotions on the golf course, which I think is a good thing. But already, if Paul's kind of spoken into a situation where Cameron is hot, Cameron has been super receptive to that. And can kind of move on once he gets frustrated. But I think the frustration that he's shown is just coming from a place of wanting to be the best he can be and wanting to win. I think we all agree, and I think the whole golfing world agrees, Cameron Young's going to win a lot of times. But I think when you're in his shoes, he's probably feeling the weight of trying to get the monkey off his back. I certainly felt it. And until that day, I think he's probably going to play with some frustration. But I do think once he wins, he'll be able to breathe a little bit.
Yeah, Brendon knows something about not winning on the PGA Tour.
This monkey's not leaving.
Top 5 career earnings without a win on the PGA Tour. So congrats on that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
But so John Deani is Jonathan. Am I saying that right?
You're saying it correct.
Is on the bag. Good player himself. Mauls it. Left-handed player. Y'all worked. RBC would have been your first week together.
First week together.
How's that going? Do you feel like you've had to kind of train him to what you like, or is he just stepping into the role for you?
Mostly he's doing a wonderful job. I've told him, he's a really high energy person, and I've told him I need him like this on the course, like no yelling.
Yeah.
I knew he wouldn't get down if I'm playing bad, but if I'm 4 under through 6, I could have seen him getting really excited. I need him just level-headed. But he's also an excellent green reader. I feel like I really need that. I've built it in my routine for now, 8 to 9 years with Paul, where we both read the putt. We come up with our own read. We split the read if we're different. And that's just kind of built into my DNA on the greens. And so I needed somebody who I felt confident in his ability to read greens. And he's done a great job so far. So when we're home and he comes and plays with me, we're still reading greens together out there. And so I need, some guys don't need a friend out there. I feel like I do. I need someone I can talk to and hang out with other than being at the golf course. And he's provided that, and he's just going to work for the rest of the season. And we didn't play great our first week, but he did a great job. I couldn't fault him at all.
Has he picked Paul's brain at all?
Oh yeah, so he's actually pretty good friends with Paul. They've talked a ton. We actually stayed at one point last week in my rental house at Hilton Head. I had my former caddy Paul, current caddy Jonathan, and my future caddy all eating dinner together. So it was a bit awkward, but also really cool that we're all friends. And but Jonathan has picked Paul's brain. I think they've talked a lot more than I even know. I'm sure Jonathan has had a bunch of questions for him as it relates to how to handle me at this point or that point. And so he's done a great job.
Can you tell us who your future caddy is going to be?
I know who it is.
Yeah. His name's David Cook.
Okay.
We call him Cookie. Cookie played at NC State. First played at Purdue with Jonathan, so they have a relationship. Jonathan transferred to Elon to play golf, and Cookie transferred to NC State to play golf. And Cookie played on the European Tour for a year, and then has caddied on the PGA Tour now, I think close to 3 years. Did a long stint with Chesson Hadley. And is now caddying for Adam Shank. But Cookie has loved Adam. They were teammates at Purdue, actually. But Adam loves golf and plays 30 weeks a year, and I don't think he's going to slow down. And Adam realized Cookie wanted to be home more. Cookie loves teaching. He loves helping. There's a young kid at Quail that Cookie's really gotten involved with, helping him develop as a player, and I think he wants to do that more often. And at 30 weeks a year, he knew he couldn't do that.
Right.
So this opportunity came available for Cookie, and I love Cookie. We've played a lot of golf together, and he does aim point, so that's checks my box of what caddies need to have. And so that'll start, I think, maybe September after Adam's season's over.
Speaking of September time frame, you've played on 3 Ryder Cups, 3 Presidents Cups. You were an assistant captain this year at Quail Hollow, or this past fall. Played with, I know, Sneds a few times, Bill Haas. Like, who were your favorite guys to play with in that team format? Well,
I had different favorites for different reasons. Bubba's an easy favorite because of a couple things. Number one, unlike my buddy Sneds and y'all's buddy Sneds.
He's not my buddy anymore.
Okay.
Ex-buddy.
Ex-buddy. Well, Bubba didn't always love the 3 and 4 footers, so his speed over the years was like every putt was within a foot of the hole. So there's no stress playing with Bubba on the greens. Well, Sneds never saw a putt he didn't think he could make. So the one time I got paired with Sneds at Memorial, fastest greens of the year, I had 4 footers all day. If Sneds was 5 feet and he missed it, I had 5 feet coming back. And so I got tired of going to the bag to get my putter. So on 16, I hit first, alternate shot. I hit it in there 6 feet, and I reached my putter, and Paul hits my hand. He's like, he's not missing this putt. I'm like, okay. So sure enough, Sneds hits it a little too hard, lips out, goes 6 feet by. So I start that dreaded walk again, and everybody's waiting on me. But Sneds, we had a great time that day actually because he's got a Bridgestone ball. I got my Titleist, and I hit his Bridgestone ball half a club further than my Titleist ball with my irons, and I had the evens, which are all 4 par 3s. So anytime I got in between clubs, I would just take his Bridgestone ball because in Presidents Cup you can switch balls like that. So that was fun. But Bubba was great because if you drive in the rough, he's an unbelievable rough player. He's used to being in the rough. He doesn't care. And, he's a laid-back partner, which I love. When Patrick Reed and I got paired together in Australia, on paper it made sense. We played the same golf ball. We play golf in a similar way. We see golf in a similar way. But we went 0-3 together. I don't think I was good for him. He wasn't necessarily good for me. He needed somebody to tell him he's terrible and, he sucks at golf.
You have a little more integrity
I'm like,
than he
hey,
does as
great
well.
shot, buddy. Yeah. So Patrick and I, 0-3, that was pretty painful.
Yeah, I think as much as you need golf games that mesh, you need personalities that mesh as well.
Yeah,
right?
you do.
In those team events, without a doubt.
Right. And, even though Patrick and I had played a number of rounds together and we played well together, it's so different playing well together in a PGA Tour event because we're not partners. We're not talking about strategy and that kind of thing. It was a bit of false assurance, though, because our practice rounds, everything was gelling. I'm like, man, this is going to work. And then we go out, and we're just flat all week.
Your assistant captain role at Quail Hollow, I know obviously you wanted to be on that team, but how was that experience different after playing in 6 of these team events? Tell me about your experience being an assistant and what your roles were.
Well, speaking of roles, I had a funny moment before the first round on Thursday morning, I'm sitting there and I realize, oh man, this is official. Like, I don't really know what to do. In the sense of, in the practice rounds, I'm just kind of filling in where caddies might need me, giving players rides here and there. Well, Thursday's official. I know there's only Davis can speak and give advice and 2 other captains, so 2 assistants can't say anything. And I'm not sure who Davis is named yet. So I basically run over to Zach. I'm like, what do I do now? And he's like, well, who have you been out in practice round? So he kind of gave me the rundown of my role starting Thursday morning. And so I was kind of with Scotty Scheffler, Sam Burns for the week. Whatever Teddy needed, whatever Sam's caddy needed for the week, I'm kind of there talking to them a little bit without giving them advice. But it was a role that I thought would be really fun. But I didn't think I would be nervous. Come Thursday, I was pretty nervous. You know, you've seen the team develop and build and get better. There was an amazing amount of time that Davis spent with us on the phone, Zoom calls, and talking about pairings that I knew they put a lot of work in, but I didn't know the extent of the work. And then now it's game time. Now it's time to go. And obviously, being a member at Quail Hollow, living in Charlotte, caring so much about the golf course and your team and wanting to win, I think it all hit me. And then, you know, Thursday morning opening ceremonies was amazing. You know, you get presidents of the United States there. You realize how big it is. And I think you just want to win so bad that I felt the nerves, even though I wasn't hitting a golf shot. But I loved it. I mean, I had a blast. And, you know, it is a lot closer than I think people thought.
Didn't you apply to be the snack mom on that team?
I was playing a practice round. I don't know if I told you this, but I was playing a practice round at the Seminole Pro Member with Davis right after he was announced captain. And we're back on the 9th tee, nobody back there. And I'm like, I finally worked up the courage to be like, hey, Davis, I'm a member at Quail. I love Charlotte. I would love to be a part of the team. I'll take out the trash in the locker room. I'll do whatever you want. And Davis thought about it for a second, and he's like, well, you know, guys like Bubba and Bryson and Patrick Reed, they all have particular snacks and smoothies they like to have. We always need somebody to run them out to them. And I don't know why that personally offended me so much, but I don't think I spoke to Davis the rest of the day. We never talked about it again. And you actually told me the week of the Presidents Cup, which now makes me feel stupid for not following up with Davis, but you said that you were running a lot of snacks to a lot of players that week.
Oh, yeah. I mean, making sandwiches, even for the caddies, whatever they needed. You know, that's the starting role, I guess. And I needed to embrace it.
Well, you had to take his job.
I don't think I was qualified to be the snack mom. But let's get deep into Quail Hollow here. I would like to hear about your chip shot on the 18th hole at Olympic in 2012 to win. I still think that has to be, where does that rank as far as your greatest shots you've ever hit?
I think it's up there with the best, probably. Just in the sense of the moment and the lie and, you know, knowing the up and down would probably be the difference. So it was one of those shots that I'm trying to hit it to about 8 feet so I don't run it off all the way down 40 yards off the green, and it comes out just as soon as it came out how you hope it will, and went to about 3 feet.
Was that your mindset? You were thinking, like, there's a good chance if I get this up and down that I'm going to win the US Open?
Yeah, I thought it could be either playoff or win.
Because you were a couple groups ahead, right?
Yeah, I was 2 groups ahead, I believe. And I knew, 17's a reachable par 5, and knew 18, you know, it's a tough short hole, but still a wedge in. But I look at leaderboards now, and I have most of my career, but at that point I wasn't looking at leaderboards, but you could kind of feel the moment that you were right there. And I didn't think it was that trick even up and down until I go look. And honestly, where I got nervous was if I hit this long and left of the hole, there was this sliver of a walkway. And y'all know how firm walkways get. It would have gone 40 yards off the green. And that's why I'm like, okay, you have to aim this right. Make bogey at worst, but at least give yourself an 8 to 10 footer. And that's kind of what I was thinking walking into it. But the chip came out perfect, and it went to 3.5 feet, and I had a little left edger, and yeah, I was definitely very nervous. But when it went in, there was a big sigh of relief. And honestly, waiting for Jim Furyk and Greg McDowell, I just didn't want to play 18 more holes the next day. So that was up there with part of the reason I wanted them not to make birdie.
And do you get 10 years exempt into the U.S.
10
Open?
years.
So do you have to go to sectionals this year?
I do.
Where are you going?
So I'm signed up for Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah, which
like-
is the Monday of the RBC Canadian Open.
So you'll obviously be playing in Canada that
I'll be
week?
playing in Canada.
Nice.
Yeah. So go out to sectionals, try to get in again because I love LACC. I've played there a few times.
It's going to be a
It's going
crazy.
to be a really cool U.S. Open.
No doubt. And you used to spend some time before before Hawaii, kind of in
Yep.
the wintertime, you all used to spend some of your winter in LA, right?
In LA, and that's why I got to play this year with a couple members. And we didn't play all the way back because some of these par fours are 520, and that day we played was about 58 degrees. So it's going to be a unique looking U.S. Open. I think for the viewers who don't know anything about LACC, not a ton of trees, pretty open, almost might resemble Oakmont in a sense of the way it looks on TV. A lot of hills, a lot of undulation for LA. So it's going to be a good spot.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
I want to go back just a little bit. You talked about making a difficult putt to win the U.S. Open. Obviously, at the time, you were allowed anchoring, right?
Yep.
What was your initial mindset come 2016 when the USGA comes out with this bombshell that anchoring's going away?
My whole thing the whole time was if it's a sure problem, then more top 20 putters on the PGA Tour would be using it. And I just thought it was a combination and domino effect in that Keegan Bradley won the PGA Championship in 11. I won the U.S. Open in 12. Ernie Els won the Open Championship in 12. And then Adam Scott won the Masters in 13. So essentially 4 majors almost back-to-back with 4 guys who anchored the putter. And so I think the USGA reacted and R&A reacted pretty quickly and strongly saying, we think this is going to be a problem in the future. I don't think it would have remained a problem. But I tell people, it's funny, I went through 2 kind of the dark years of my career with putting where I was one of the worst putters on the PGA Tour statistically, like 180 to 200 with the short putter. But then I played enough golf with Matt Kuchar, who uses the arm lock method, and he putted great. So I'm like, I'm going to try that. And 2018, I finished the season 5th in putting, and I don't think I ever would have touched that with the belly putter. So it's like, it was a good example for me of like, okay, they changed the rule. At first it hurt me, but it ended up making me, I think, a better putter than I would have been with the belly putter. So I guess looking back, I am thankful they changed it, but I still didn't think there was enough evidence there for them to need to change it.
I remember sitting at lunch at an event with Brian Harmon, and your name came up right when they'd made this ban. And Harm looked at me and he said, you could put anything in Webb's hands. He's going to figure out how to get it in the hole. I thought that was a
That's
huge
nice
compliment. Yeah, he did. He said, you could put anything in Webb's hands. He's going to figure out how to get in the hole quicker than most.
Well, it's funny because as a kid, you care a lot about what you look like when you putt or what putter you use. I mean, I remember using Scotty Cameron's just because they look good, not because I made putts with them. But I got to putting so bad with the short putter so poorly that I remember saying to my caddy Paul, I'm like, hey, I will use a shovel. I just need to get the ball in the hole. It doesn't matter. So, in fact, it was 2016 here at the Wells Fargo. Played Thursday, Friday, missed a cut, and Saturday, no golf course access for me at Quail as a missed cut, so I went to Charlotte Country Club with the arm lock putter. Just wanted to go putt some immediately to see if it was better, and it was better. And then what really changed things for me is Tim Clark came and looked at my putting at the Players Championship and asked me, have I ever considered using the claw? And I said no, and I tried it, and felt pretty weird at first, but I was making everything with it, and I stuck with it, and still use the claw to this day. So I still probably have the most unique putting method on the tour, arm lock with the claw. But at least my putting's become more consistent the last few years.
So what most traditional putters have about 3 to 4 degrees of loft. When you have that arm lock, you've got to add a bunch of loft to it. So what is the loft on your putter currently?
6.5.
Okay.
Yep, and it's about 42 inches
Okay.
in length. So, there's rumblings that they should make this method illegal, and sure, it is anchored against my arm, but hopefully with Jason Gore, his role at the USGA, and now he's with the PGA Tour, hopefully those things won't, be that spur of the moment. Although I say that and I'm thinking about the rollback, and I don't know if we were going to get into that today, but that's a whole nother topic.
Do you want to get into it?
All I'll say is I hope we don't roll things back. I think it'd be a big mistake. It's going to cost manufacturers a ton of money, ton of time and R&D that they could spend trying to make their own products better right now. I think there's been some interesting studies to show that it actually benefits the longer hitters, not the shorter hitters or medium length hitters. And I think the bigger problem is more in golf course design and not technology. So
yeah, you look at a golf course like Valspar there at Innisbrook, Copperhead, and have tree-lined fairways with rough, have better placed bunkers. I mean, I think we're about to dive into some Wells Fargo and Quail Hollow, and it is more of the just keep building it longer and longer and keep pushing the bunkers out further. And guys are still covering that bunker on 16. I know you've believed that we needed to add another bunker or flip that bunker over, and it's a never-ending process. And it's like when we got rid of the square grooves and wedges, players are going to learn how to spin the wedges correctly no matter what grooves are in it. Manufacturers are good enough at making V-groove wedges spin like the old ones did. So I do wish there was something that could be done to bring these old school courses back in, but I agree with you. I think we were rookies on tour. We had rough every week, and now you look at the Mexico Open this week. There's, you'd rather be in the rough. It's up higher. So
and I was at Quail yesterday, and we caught number 7, the par 5 downwind, and Wells Fargo week, the fairways are firm. It's probably the best. It's probably the Quail Hollow Club during the tournament is probably the best in shape club of the year. Therefore, we're going to get 30, 40 yards of roll unless we get a lot of rain. And you get Cameron Young or Rory McIlroy downwind on 7, they're probably going to hit a wedge or 9-iron in. And I think the public or even the TV announcers, not you, Johnson, but their immediate reaction is this hole's too short. When I don't think that's always the answer. 7, we don't have a whole lot of room there to make it longer.
Go back into your house.
Yeah, you can make a little dog leg right. But yeah, I would love to see a little more creativity on the design side of how are we going to make this hole harder without making it longer. And I think there's plenty of options. We even looked at yesterday on number 9 at Quail. I mean, it's 490 yards, and I get there and I was with Paul yesterday, and I said, isn't it amazing that these bombers will hit cuts on this hole? They teed up on the right side, they hit cuts, but if you move the tee 6 yards left, we kind of walked over there, and they have to draw it. And so they're going to be more 3-wood. So little things like that are so easy to do.
Kind of like the angle on 2. I know downwind, some of those bombers can probably hit cuts and cover that corner, but I think 2 is a perfect example with that tee back more into the left, forcing guys to hit 3-wood out down the right side and come in with a 7-iron, 8-iron like that green's designed to be hit from.
And if they do hit driver, they have to draw it, which modern technology is harder to do, and it takes more skill to draw a driver. So yeah, it's a great example.
Have you ever stood on the 9th tee at Quail and seen a cut shot there?
I don't think I've stood on any tee box in my life and seen a cut shot, Brendon. But so getting to the Wells Fargo, I've got so many questions for you. Obviously, you have an intimate knowledge of Quail Hollow Club. What are some of your favorite things about the club and specifically Wells Fargo week?
One of my favorite things about the club is it is first and foremost a golf club. It is a very fun club to be a part of. Tons of fun things socially, but when it comes to golf, there's not a ton of members. There's no tee times. You play when you want. You play with the size of the group you want as long as you play fast, which I love. It's nice knowing that the fastest round of golf in town is at Quail Hollow, especially on a Saturday at 12 o'clock. You're going to play in under 4 hours. But as a professional, it's an amazing practice facility, and like I said, with the lower membership, the opportunities for me to go out on the golf course whenever I want, hit shots, tough holes, obviously Green Mile, go out and it's as tough as you want to make it. I love being there. I think it's helped me tremendously as a player get better. But, it has been tricky over the years to be a member of Quail and play in the Wells Fargo because the golf course is a little different than you and I typically see it. So I'm learning even every year, okay, this line's a little different this hole, or this green releases a lot more than it normally does. So that's stuff I'm logging away in my brain even week of the tournament.
You guys have got such a cool locker room there as well, Quail. I mean, what a place to hang out for a couple hours, as you know.
Well, I think Webb and I maybe have different philosophies about hanging out in the locker room, but we're getting him in there more. He's starting to give in. He's getting older. He realizes the hang is pretty darn good.
If you walk in there and see him at a table, do you just go to the other corner if you
No,
can?
he's a good hang. His table's a good table. Now, I'm not as bold as him and Harold Wagner at sitting at the table of knowledge yet. You know, they'll sit right down, which I probably need to do, but I'm still a little afraid. I feel like a little kid, like I shouldn't sit down there.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the table of knowledge is the big circular table right in the middle. It's where Johnny Harris sits, and I love hanging out with the Moes. I consider myself a Mo, and that's the older group of guys that play pretty much every day, and those are for sure my people. And speaking of Johnny Harris, there's been a lot of changes to the golf course since you and I have both been members out there. I'm of the opinion Johnny's done a great job bringing championship golf to Charlotte, and all the changes are to make it a better venue. But what are some of your thoughts, and what are some of your favorite changes to the club and least favorite changes to the club in your time here in Charlotte?
Yeah, I used to really love the opening 2 holes at Quail. I thought 1's a great par 4, not hard but not easy. 2's perfect par 3, 8 iron to 6 iron. Great intro to the golf course, and now it's completely different. It's 510-yard par 4. But when I understood what he wanted to do for the Presidents Cup for the first tee, the horseshoe kind of hospitality suites on the ground level, big grandstands, I understood it. Doesn't mean I don't miss the old start, but I understand it now. It is a beautiful looking tee shot. And 16, I love the old 16th hole. But standing there for the approach shot now, I feel like is an amazing looking approach shot. And to incorporate the green mile, the hospitality, what they're able to do. I think, like you said, getting older, kind of see golf as, the whole viewership of, man, we got to give these guys a great golf course. We got to provide financial opportunity for the club, for the town. I get it. I know there's things that Johnny has to do. But I love Quail. I miss a couple of the old holes, yes, but I guess for lack of more thoughts, I love the golf course still. It's definitely gotten harder. We used to have bent greens, now we have Bermuda, so they're a lot more firm in the golf tournament. Right now, we're not even making ball marks out there. And so that's why over the years, some years 9 under, 10 under wins. But yeah, it is very hard. I think every year, Quail Hollow greens are the top 3 hardest to putt greens on the PGA Tour, which I get it. I still don't know how to read them. Hopefully Jonathan does. But yeah, I'm excited for next week.
I absolutely love the old 16th. I thought that was such a cool hole, along with 12. I thought those were the 2 best tee shots on the golf course. I was really sad to see that go. I want to get your opinions on that, because that's close to you, I know. Yeah,
I think 12 is still pretty much the same. Green was softened a little bit when we went to Bermuda, and I absolutely love having Bermuda greens at Quail Hollow. You walk through the locker room and see the old paintings, and we used to have a lot more trees out there. Obviously, the Bermuda grass needs more air and more sunlight. But 16, the old 16, was one of the best holes on the PGA Tour. But when I was at the Presidents Cup, I was sitting on that hillside watching the new 16th green, the hillside that goes up to the 17th tee, and the atmosphere, the amphitheater that it created. I don't think anybody can argue that 16 is a better golf hole now, but from a viewer's tournament perspective, I think the new 16 is a home run.
Yeah, I just wish I could hit it about 310 in the air, because that fairway would be twice as wide.
I played with Phil on Sunday a few years back, and he hit this big high cut, carried the bunker, had a flip wedge in. I hit the best tee shot of my life.
Squeezed it right by the bunker?
Squeezed it right, it was downwind, squeezed it right by the bunker, and I was still through the fairway in the left rough and had to hit this big hooking 8 iron into the green. But yeah, there's just some tee shots out there that maybe favor the long hitter a little bit. But we love Rory McIlroy around Quail Hollow, so whatever we can do to get him the champion. You've had a couple good finishes there. You've had a bit of a mixed bag. I know you finished second in 15. Was it 4th in 2012? What is it like playing at your home course and having success like that?
It's really fun. I mean, this is, you're out there, you see your friends, you see family, you also see members, and it's fun to see, the members you see every day while you're practicing are out there rooting you on, which is really fun. But yeah, I wish I've had more opportunities to win there. My best year there, like you said, in 15 was I thought on Saturday when I eagled 15, I was probably 2 or 3 ahead, and I think I was like 4 back because that was the day McIlroy, I think, shot some 10 under. But he obviously loves the golf course. He's the guy to beat every year there. But it'd be a dream to win at home. You know, it would feel, I think, that's like a major in its own category in my mind. To win at your home event would be really special.
Do you feel an added pressure going into that week? Obviously, you do.
I do. I feel an added pressure, but I think at first it was like a negative added pressure. Like I had this weight on me that I should play well. It's my home course. But now I feel more of like I want to play well just for me, not for anyone else, not for Charlotte or not for the club. I want to play well for me. And so I feel like I've handled it a little better, but it's interesting. I haven't played at Wells Fargo at Quail since 2019 because we had COVID in 20 and I got hurt in 21, and obviously last year was up in DC. So it's 4 years running I hadn't played.
Did you feel an added pressure playing?
Absolutely. I know you did as well. I mean,
Yeah.
My in-laws would always come in. You've got more ticket requests than you usually do. You just seem busier. It makes me wonder like how these guys like McIlroy and Scheffler, with all their media obligations and everything they do on a given week, they must just have such incredibly structured schedules, which is one of the things I've always been impressed about you with your practice regimen. I see you out there all the time. I'm like, hey, Webb, let's go play 9 holes. And I don't know if it's that you're just that regimented or you just don't like playing with me.
I know what it is. I know exactly what it is.
But you have that sort of work ethic built in, which I know is a big reason why you've been so successful.
Yeah, and 5 kids is busy. So between practices and this and that, I got to get my practice in and be done.
What's your favorite hole at Quail Hollow?
Favorite hole is 7, not because I live there. It was my favorite hole before I lived there, but I think it's like a perfect risk-reward par 5. The tee ball is not particularly that hard, but there's water if you push it. You hit a good drive, you get rewarded. You go for the green pretty much every time. The green's got this massive bowl front right, so when they do put the pin down there and you're in the fairway, you're thinking you're going to have a good chance for eagle. I think I think every par 5, in my opinion, should be reachable, and every par 5 should have some risk reward in it. And 7 has that, and I've always loved it.
As golfers, we're typically creatures of habit. So now you've got a home week at Wells. Are you trying to treat that the same way you'll treat every week when you're on the road, or while you're at home, you're trying to help out as much as you possibly can?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the more I treat it like a normal tournament, the better off I'll be. I still might run carpool that I'm not doing at a normal or at a different tournament, but that'll just help kind of put the week in perspective for me a little bit. But it will be busy, like you said, Johnson. I got sister's mom coming in town, but they understand now, 15 years in, that this is a work week. I can't be hanging out at night. I'm going to bed early. So I want to know your favorite hole, though, Johnson.
It's between 7 and 14. I don't think I've ever laid up on 14, even in the wintertime back into the wind. I'm still thinking I can get it there. But I love when the wind switches kind of early May, right around the time, April this year, and 14 starts playing downwind every day. I just think it is one of the best drivable par 4s on the PGA Tour because 10 at Riviera, I love 15 in Hartford, but 14 at Quail. If you hit the right shot shape, you can make an eagle. You can hit it close to a front left hole location. I've had a tap in for eagle in the Wells before. Well, I mean, I've made my share of doubles and triples there too, but I just think a good drivable par 4 at that location on the golf course. You got a fave?
I love 12. I do, especially. I mean, I love that you're back there kind of by yourself with that tee shot and just the shape of that tee, I think is awesome.
And now on 12T, I love you can see all the way through to 13 green. It's a pretty cool tee shot.
Yeah, I don't like it when they remove trees from golf courses, but I think they've done such a good job out there, as Webb says, where you can see all the way through now.
And left of 12, when Keith Wood, our superintendent, came from Sedgefield, there was one other big tree, and it used to be all pine straw. And now Keith, leading into the 17 PGA, said, I'm taking this tree out, no more pine. I mean, there's a couple spots of pine straw, but we've been able to grow rough over there, making it a much more difficult shot from my office left of the 12th fairway.
At least it gives the opportunity where you can run it up from that left side, though.
For sure, and one of my favorite spots out there is my favorite hole, 14T, from the front edge of the back tee. You can see every single hole in the back 9, which I love having, to your point, tree removal brings in these vistas, and you can see all the way up to the clubhouse and 18th green. One of my favorite spots to stand.
Yeah, Charlotte market, I think, is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, markets we go to for golf fans. The city loves it, supports it. Amazing turnout every year, and no surprise, it's one of the players' favorite tournaments every year.
Yeah, you get out there on a Tuesday. Most weeks on a Tuesday, there's no spectators.
quiet.
You show up in a Monday Pro-Am, you're signing autographs, and on a Wednesday Pro-Am, as I know we all know, we used to play in threesomes, so it played fast. But between every green and tee, it's kids being out of school, and it's just got it's got such a great vibe. And I remember a lot of times I'd be complaining about how many autographs I had to sign on a Wednesday Pro-Am, and that's one of those things I regret saying now, because I would give anything to be signing autographs in a Wednesday Pro-Am.
Should we play some hammer?
Yeah, let's play some hammer. This is our little closing segment here. You want to lead us off tonight?
All right. A few years ago, you hired a trainer. You wanted to get stronger.
Yeah.
You realized where golf was going, distance was really important. You got a nice gym at your house. There's one piece of equipment that apparently you don't really agree with or get on real well with. I heard from this trainer that you might have kicked this a couple times, slapped it. I think his words were you acted like a 10-year-old little girl. Explain to us about this,
talk to him about
about this piece of equipment.
Well, I don't even know what it's called, but you get in there, you put your feet in and kind of hook your ankles in, and you're kind of holding your weight up with your lower core, and you're dipping down and dipping up to work on your lower core and your lower back. Well, every time I would get in there, my hamstrings felt like they would catch on fire, and I hated it. And he always wanted me to keep doing it and work on my lower core. He kept telling me my lower core is weak. I need, to hit it further, you got to have a stronger lower core. And I kept asking him, is there any other exercise we can do? Anything. I hate this. And he's like, no, we got to do this. And I think he found it amusing, even though he kept a straight face. So finally one day he wanted me to rep it out as many as I could. And by the end, my legs felt like they were so on fire that I did stand up, and I had like a little tantrum. I started slapping it and told him I hated it. It looked like, a little 5-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So it's still in there. But he has been on the road 2 weeks. So now that you say that, it'd be a good time if I was going to get rid of it.
Right. I was telling me it
Now's the
broke or
time.
something.
Yes.
Yeah. Someone stole it.
Right.
Your college teammates describe you as a bit of a goofball when you were traveling through the airport, like pulling all sorts of sort of weird things. What were you doing? Everybody in the airport's looking at you like you're crazy, but your golf team, your coach, Jerry Haas, they just thought you were hilarious. What kind of things were
I
you
did
doing?
have a goofy streak in me, so and now looking back, it gives me just tremendous anxiety even thinking that I used to do this. But my teammates would laugh, and I'd pull my pants up as high as I could go, kind of right here under my chest, tighten my belt, borrow one of my teammates' pair of glasses, kind of bring my hat down, flatten the bill, and then I would go stand in front of, the departure signs. All these people are trying to figure out where their gate is, and I'd just go stand in front of them, looking at it, and all these people would be looking at me like, who is this guy? What's his deal? And my teammates would be back in the corner laughing. I used to stand up in the aisle on flights and start stretching, all these goofy stretches, and everyone around me is concerned, like, what is he doing? Where my teammates are they're rolling over laughing. But now I could never do that. It'd have to be a lot of money. There'd have to be a good incentive for me to do that kind of stuff.
It was described as a bit of a Steve Urkel from Family
Right.
Matters
Yeah,
sort of
there you
sketch.
go.
Did you have the voice? I mean,
No. I couldn't talk like him. It was more of the show.
Johnson always used to walk down the jet bridge and fall on purpose and kind of roll into the people that are lining up to get on the plane. There'd always be some sweet old lady that's like concerned that he's hurt himself.
We would have gotten along well.
It got a ride. I think Brendon was the only one that didn't think it was particularly funny.
I think I kicked him a few times when I walked by.
That sounds about right.
We'd have gotten along.
Yeah. All right, you have become somewhat of a coffee connoisseur, maybe even a coffee snob, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Travel with a complete kit. Mm-hmm. So will you get to an airport, clear out a desk, and start brewing your coffee right there?
I will.
That's
Yeah.
awful.
Now, my wife tells me, and other people tell me that should embarrass me, but it doesn't. But yeah, I have my kettle, my grinder, my scale, and my coffee beans, and I'll sit right there in front of a bunch of people and make my coffee.
Do you ever pour free cups to people walking by?
No, some people come and joke like they want one, and I'm like, all right, if you really want one, it's going to take me about 5 minutes, and they just keep going.
Is it a French press?
No, it's there's this filter you put in, and you put the grounds in there, and you pour hot water over it. So that's why they call it the pour over. I'll make one and take it on the plane with me.
Nice.
You know, some people think it's too much work, but what it gives me, I'm willing to put into the work.
And do you travel with like a Yeti mug or something? What do you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I put it in a mug, and then I actually have an Ember mug, which Ember keeps the coffee hot for an hour. So I put it in the Yeti, and then on the plane, so I don't spill it, I pour it into my Ember mug.
Is it true that you might have tripped something in London Heathrow one time?
I did. Man, y'all did some good background work. We were sitting waiting for our bags, and it was the baggage issue this summer, so they lost our bags. And we're waiting at Heathrow, and I want to make a coffee. And I go to plug in my kettle, and I guess the power didn't work out well because this whole line, about 20 feet of everybody's phones quit charging. So I think I fried something in that airport. But thankfully, it wasn't loud. But I see all these people start looking, they're replugging in. And I walk over to Paul and I said, I think I just fried the whole thing.
That's awesome. Taking it to a whole new level. Yeah. All right. Sorry about this. You have a 2-5 career playoff record on the PGA Tour, 0-1 on the Korn Ferry Tour. Like, it's such a shame Brendon couldn't get into a playoff with you.
If I ever wanted to win it, I'd not just need a playoff.
Why are you so bad in playoffs?
That's a great question. You know, I didn't really think about it until I realized, man, I've lost like every playoff. Maybe I should learn from this. I think I got so relaxed in playoffs. Like regulation, for some reason, I'm still in the moment. And then playoff comes, and I felt this like, okay, the tournament's over. It's just me and another guy. So I almost felt relaxed in a negative way. I felt like if I felt more nervous and more into it, I think it would have helped. But that's the only thing I could put my finger on. I remember my sports psychologist said, we got to figure this out. Like, what do you think it is? And I'm like, this is the only thing I can come up with. Maybe the tournament's essentially over for everyone else. But yeah, that is a pretty crappy record.
What's your playoff record?
1-1, beat Spencer Levine in Mexico, where he basically handed it to me. And then I was in a 2-hole playoff with Spieth and JB Holmes in Houston. And I was waiting for somebody to hand it to me. I was actually on a plane with Nota Begay the next day and explaining like my second playoff. I thought somebody was going to make a mistake, and he's like, playoff rule number 1: you go out and you get it. You go out and you take it on the first hole with the birdie, and if you don't, you lose. So be it. But you have to have that mindset. How about you, big dog? I know it's got a 0 to start.
I'm 0-2. I obviously never played off against him, but yeah, I'm 0-2.
What were those?
RSM.
Against
was
who?
one. Robert Streb.
Okay.
And then Scott Piercy beat me in Scranton in a Korn Ferry event.
Okay.
0-2.
I played in that. Was that 08?
Yep.
Yeah, I was there.
You weren't in our playoff.
No, I was 24th, and why I remember that is on Korn Ferry, top 25 gets you the next week. Well, the next week I think was Utah, and so I was pretty nervous there on that last hole, knowing I got to come out and Monday qualify if I don't par this last hole. So I got my 24th, which probably felt as good as your second that week.
Probably. One final one. Do you think the hardest part of caddying for you is trying to figure out what head cover goes on which hybrid?
It must be. I mean, I have, I think, 7 head covers in my bag right now. Paul, he got it wrong tons over the years. But yeah, I asked Titleist to make me a 5 hybrid, and they laughed, and they didn't think I was serious, and I was serious. I was dead serious. I need all the help I can get with those long clubs. But yeah, it's a pretty colorful bag.
You got anything else?
No, that's it.
Webb, thank you so much for joining us. You're the man.
Brendon.
Yeah,
Good luck
thank you
to
very much. Really appreciate you coming on.
A lot of fun.